What happens when royalty meets daytime television and refuses to play by the rules? In just 38 seconds, one shocking comment would turn a friendly interview into the most explosive moment in talk show history. The View's studio audience settled into their seats that morning, expecting nothing more than the usual celebrity interview. Prince Harry had been making the rounds, promoting his latest charitable endeavor, and Joy Behar was set to lead the conversation. The cameras rolled, the lights blazed hot, and what started as pleasantries would soon descend into absolute chaos. Joy Behar smiled warmly at her guest, extending the kind of welcome she'd given to hundreds of celebrities before. Prince Harry, thank you so much for being here with us today. We're excited to talk about your new project. Harry nodded. But there was something stiff about his demeanor, something that suggested he wasn't quite comfortable in the brightly lit studio. His eyes scanned the set with what could only be described as disdain, as if he were judging every light fixture, every camera angle, every carefully placed coffee mug on the table. "Thanks for having me," he replied, his voice flat and devoid of any real warmth. Joy, ever the professional, didn't seem to notice the coldness in his tone. Or if she did, she chose to ignore it, giving him the benefit of the doubt. She dove into her first question, keeping things light and conversational, the way she always did when starting an interview. "So tell us, what inspired this particular cause? What made you want to focus your energy here? We'd love to hear the story behind it." It was a softball question, the kind designed to let a guest shine, to let them talk about something they were passionate about. Most celebrities would have jumped at the opportunity, grateful for the easy opening, but Harry wasn't most celebrities. He leaned back in his chair, and his answer came with an edge that caught everyone off guard. The shift in his tone was immediate and unmistakable. "Well, Joy, I think it's fairly obvious to anyone with half a brain that this issue matters. Some of us actually care about making a difference, instead of just sitting around talking about it." The insult hung in the air like smoke. Joy blinked, her smile freezing on her face for just a fraction of a second. The other hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seats. In the audience, people exchanged confused glances, wondering if they'd heard correctly. Had he really just said that? The audience fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop in that studio. Joy's smile faltered for just a moment, a flicker of surprise crossing her features, but she recovered quickly, maintaining her professionalism with the skill of someone who'd been doing this for decades. She wasn't going to let a rude comment derail the interview, at least not yet. "I think everyone on this panel cares deeply about important causes, Harry. We use our platform to discuss these issues every single day. That's actually one of the core missions of this show." She said it evenly, without anger, simply stating a fact. It was a gentle correction, an invitation for him to walk back his comment and start over. Any reasonable person would have taken the opportunity. "Do you really?" Harry shot back. And now there was no mistaking the condescension dripping from every word. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, looking at Joy as though she were a child who'd just said something particularly naive. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like a lot of chatting and not much action. That's the problem with people in your position. All talk, no follow through. You sit here in your comfortable chairs, in your air-conditioned studio, and you discuss the world's problems like they're abstract concepts. Meanwhile, some of us are actually out there doing the work." Joy's jaw tightened, but her voice remained calm and controlled. "I'm not sure what you're implying, but we've raised millions of dollars for various charities through this show. We've brought attention to countless important issues. We've connected people who needed help with people who could provide it. We've used our platform to shine a light on things that might otherwise go unnoticed." Harry waved his hand dismissively, as though swatting away her words like annoying flies. The gesture was so casual, so arrogant, that it made the insult even worse. Sure. But have you actually done anything? Have you been on the ground, in the trenches, getting your hands dirty? Or do you just sit in your comfortable studio and lecture people about what they should be doing? It's easy to talk about problems when you're not the one dealing with the consequences. He sat back again, crossing his arms over his chest, a smug expression settling on his face. He looked proud of himself, as though he'd just delivered some devastating truth that would leave Joy speechless. The other hosts exchanged nervous glances. One of them reached for her water glass, just to have something to do with her hands. Another cleared her throat quietly. This was spiraling quickly, and everyone could feel it. The temperature in the room seemed to rise. Joy could feel the tension spreading through the studio like wildfire, crackling and dangerous. But she wasn't about to let a guest, royal or not, disrespect her on her own show. Not today. Not ever. "Harry, I think you're being incredibly unfair," Joy said, and now her voice was growing firmer, losing some of that diplomatic softness. "We invited you here as a guest to talk about your work, not to insult ours. I'd appreciate a little respect. I think that's a reasonable thing to ask for." "Respect?" Harry laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. It was harsh and mocking, the kind of laugh that was designed to belittle. That's rich coming from someone who makes a living gossiping about other people's lives. You want respect? Maybe try earning it first. Maybe try actually contributing something meaningful to the world instead of just talking about other people's contributions. The audience gasped. Several people covered their mouths in shock. This was no longer an interview. This wasn't even a difficult conversation. This was a confrontation, hostile and ugly, and it was happening live on national television. Millions of people were watching this unfold in real time. Joy's face flushed, a red color creeping up her neck and into her cheeks. But she maintained her composure with impressive willpower, refusing to sink to his level, refusing to let him see how much his words stung. She'd dealt with difficult people before. She'd navigated tense interviews, but this level of unprovoked hostility from a guest was something new. "I've been doing this job for many years," Joy said slowly, deliberately, choosing each word with care. "I've interviewed presidents, world leaders, activists, authors, scientists, and yes, even royalty. And never, not once, have I had a guest come on this show and behave the way you're behaving right now. This is completely unprecedented." Harry scoffed, a sound of pure derision, and crossed his arms over his chest like a petulant child who'd been told no for the first time in his life. Maybe that's because everyone else is too polite to tell you the truth. Or maybe they're too scared. Maybe they don't want to risk offending the mighty Joy Behar and getting blacklisted from the talk show circuit. But someone needs to say it. Someone needs to be honest with you. This whole setup, this whole show, it's just a circus. You're not journalists. You're not making a difference. You're entertainers playing dress-up, pretending your conversations matter when really you're just filling airtime between commercials. Each word was like a slap, delivered with maximum impact. He wasn't just criticizing the show. He was trying to tear it down completely, to invalidate everything Joy and her colleagues did. And he was doing it with a smile on his face, clearly enjoying himself. Joy's co-hosts looked ready to jump in, their faces showing a mixture of anger and disbelief. One started to open her mouth to speak, but Joy held up a hand. A subtle gesture, but unmistakable, signaling that she could handle this herself. Her years of experience in broadcasting had prepared her for difficult guests, for people who came with agendas, for interviews that went sideways. But this was something else entirely. This was pure entitlement, the belief that his royal status gave him the right to insult anyone he pleased. "Harry, you came on this show voluntarily," Joy reminded him, her voice steady and controlled, despite the anger that must have been building inside her. "Nobody forced you to be here. Nobody twisted your arm. You reached out to us, or your people did, asking to come on. If you find us so beneath you, If you think we're such a joke, I'm wondering why you bothered showing up at all. What exactly were you hoping to accomplish here today? It was a fair question. R asked without malice, and it seemed to catch Harry off guard for a moment. His confident expression flickered. Good question, Harry muttered after a pause, looking away from her as though the conversation bored him, though his body language suggested otherwise. His jaw was tight, his shoulders tense. I'm starting to wonder that myself. This was clearly a mistake. Let me ask you something, Joy continued, leaning forward slightly, her eyes locked on his. Do you talk to everyone like this, or is it just women you feel comfortable disrespecting? Because I'm genuinely curious. That got his attention. Harry's head snapped back toward her, his eyes narrowing dangerously. His whole body went rigid. Excuse me? Are you seriously trying to make this about gender? That's absurd. That's typical, actually. When you can't defend your position, you play the gender card. I'm asking a legitimate question, Joy replied calmly, not backing down an inch. Because the way you're speaking to me right now, the dismissiveness, the condescension, the way you're treating me like I'm some kind of idiot, it's pretty telling. I've been around long enough to recognize certain patterns of behavior. Harry's face reddened, the color spreading from his neck upward. This has nothing to do with you being a woman. This has absolutely nothing to do with gender. This has to do with you being part of a machine that tears people down for ratings, that invades privacy, that destroys lives. My family, my wife, we've been victims of that machine. We've been chewed up and spit out by people like you. His voice had risen, and there was genuine pain mixed with the anger now. For the first time, a crack appeared in his hostile facade, revealing something more complex underneath. And I'm sorry for what you and your family have gone through, Joy said, and her sympathy sounded genuine, her voice softening slightly. I truly am. The media can be cruel. I know that. But that doesn't give you the right to come on this show and attack me personally. I've never said anything unkind about you or your wife. In fact, we've defended you on multiple occasions. We've talked about the unfair treatment you've received. We've criticized the tabloids that have hounded you. Defended me? Harry's voice rose even higher, almost to a shout now. Several audience members actually flinched. You people don't defend anyone. You just pick sides based on whatever gets you the most attention, whatever will drive up your ratings. Today, you defend me. Tomorrow you'll tear me apart if it suits you. That's how this works. That's how it's always worked. Joy took a deep breath, a long, slow inhale and exhale, the kind you take when you're trying to maintain control of a situation that's rapidly slipping away. When she spoke again, her voice was ice cold, every word carefully measured. I think we need to take a break. No, Harry said sharply, sitting up straighter in his chair. I'm not finished. I have more to say. Actually, you are, Joy replied, her tone leaving absolutely no room for argument. There was steel in her voice now, a hardness that hadn't been there before. This interview is over. We're done here. Harry stared at her in disbelief, his mouth actually falling open slightly, as though he couldn't comprehend that someone was actually standing up to him, actually telling him no. You can't just end this because you don't like what I'm saying. You invited me here to talk. Well, I'm talking. This is my show, Joy stated firmly, her hand flat on the table for emphasis. And yes, I absolutely can. You came here as a guest, and you've done nothing but insult me and my colleagues from the moment you sat down. I've given you every opportunity to have a respectful conversation, and you've chosen to be hostile instead. I asked you about your charitable work. That was your opening. You could have talked about something you care about. Instead, you decided to attack us. Hostile? Harry laughed again, that same bitter, ugly sound that was becoming his signature in this conversation. I'm being honest. I'm telling you the truth that nobody else has the guts to say. If you can't handle honesty, if you can't handle criticism, maybe you're in the wrong business. Maybe you should find a job where everyone just tells you how wonderful you are all the time. There's a difference between honesty and rudeness, Joy countered, her voice growing stronger. There's a difference between constructive criticism and personal attacks. And you've crossed that line repeatedly. You haven't offered a single piece of constructive feedback. You've just been mean. I'm asking you to leave. I'm telling you to leave. The studio fell completely silent. Every camera operator, every producer, every audience member sat frozen, watching this unprecedented moment unfold. Guests didn't get kicked off The View. It simply didn't happen. This was history being made, and everyone in that room knew it. Harry's expression shifted from defiance to shock. You're joking. I'm not joking at all, Joy said, her voice unwavering. You need to leave. Now. This is absurd, Harry sputtered, looking around as though searching for someone to back him up. You invite me here, and then throw me out because I dare to speak my mind? You didn't speak your mind, Joy corrected him. You came here with an agenda to be disrespectful, and I won't tolerate it. So please, gather your things and go. Harry sat there for a moment, seemingly unable to process what was happening. His face cycled through emotions. Confusion, anger, embarrassment. Fine, he finally said, standing abruptly. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. I don't need this. I don't need any of this. Then we're in agreement, Joy replied coolly. Harry reached for the microphone clipped to his collar, fumbling with it as his hands shook with barely contained rage. You're making a huge mistake, he said, pointing a finger at Joy. Do you know who I am? I know exactly who you are, Joy answered, meeting his gaze without flinching. And that doesn't change anything. You don't get to treat people poorly just because of your title. Unbelievable, Harry muttered, finally getting the microphone off. He dropped it on the table with a clatter that echoed through the silent studio. Absolutely unbelievable. Security will escort you out, Joy said, and as if on cue, 2 security personnel appeared at the edge of the set, and ready to intervene if necessary. Harry looked at them, then back at Joy, his expression a mixture of outrage and humiliation. This is how you treat your guests? This is how I treat people who show up and act like you've acted, Joy responded. I've been nothing but professional. I welcomed you warmly. I asked you fair questions, and you responded with attacks and insults. So yes, this is exactly how I treat guests who behave that way. The audience, which had been holding its collective breath, began to murmur. A few people even started clapping, slowly at first, then building into genuine applause. They were supporting Joy, rallying behind her decision to stand her ground. Harry heard the applause, and his face darkened further. Of course they're clapping. They're your audience. They'll support whatever you do. They're clapping because they recognize disrespect when they see it, Joy said simply, just like I do. Harry grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair, yanking it on with jerky, frustrated movements. I came here to talk about something important, something that could actually help people, and you've turned it into this. No, Harry, Joy said, shaking her head. You did that all by yourself. You had every opportunity to have a meaningful conversation about your cause. Instead, you chose to be combative and rude. Those were your choices, not mine. Whatever helps you sleep at night, Harry snapped, heading toward the edge of the set. Joy watched him go, her expression unreadable. I hope you find a way to channel that anger into something productive, she called after him, because right now, you're just hurting yourself and your own message. Harry paused for just a second, his back to the cameras, then continued walking. The security personnel followed at a discreet distance, ensuring he left without further incident. As Harry disappeared from view, Joy turned back to the cameras, taking a moment to compose herself. The audience continued their applause, growing louder now, more enthusiastic. Her co-hosts reached over, touching her arm in solidarity. Well, Joy said, and despite everything, there was a slight smile on her face. That was unexpected. The audience laughed, a release of all the tension that had been building. Joy's ability to find lightness, even in such a bizarre moment, reminded everyone why she'd been successful for so long. She didn't take herself too seriously. Sure, but she also wouldn't let anyone walk all over her. "We're going to take a quick break," Joy announced, looking directly into the camera. "And when we come back, we'll continue with our scheduled programming. Because, unlike some people, we're professionals." The cameras cut away, and the studio erupted. Producers rushed onto the set, checking on Joy and the other hosts. Audience members chattered excitedly among themselves, already pulling out their phones to text friends and family about what they'd just witnessed. Joy sat back in her chair, letting out a long breath. Her hands were steady, her voice had never wavered, but now that it was over, she allowed herself a moment to process what had just happened. She'd kicked a prince off her show. An actual prince. One of her co-hosts leaned over. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Joy assured her. "Honestly, I'm more annoyed than anything else." "What a waste of time." "You handled that perfectly," another host chimed in. "Seriously, Joy, you were incredible." "I just did what anyone should do when someone's being disrespectful," Joy replied with a shrug. "Title or no title, nobody gets to come on this show and act like that." Backstage, the producers were already dealing with the aftermath. Harry had apparently tried to argue with them, insisting he'd been treated unfairly. But the producers had stood firm, backing Joy's decision completely. Meanwhile, members of the audience were already sharing their experiences on social media. Videos taken on phones had somehow made their way online. Hashtags were starting to trend. But in the studio, as the break continued, Joy remained calm and focused. She'd stood up for herself and her team. 30 seconds, a producer called out, signaling that they were about to go back live. Joy checked her appearance in the monitor and put on her professional smile. When those cameras turned back on, she'd be ready. The red light blinked on, indicating they were live again. Joy looked into the camera with the ease of someone who'd done this thousands of times before. "Welcome back," she said warmly. "Now, let's talk about something actually worth discussing." And just like that, the show continued. The empty chair where Harry had been sitting remained visible, a silent reminder of what had occurred. Throughout the rest of the show, Joy never mentioned what had happened again. Everyone watching had seen it. There was no need to rehash. When the show finally wrapped for the day, Joy removed her microphone, said goodbye to her co-hosts, and headed to her dressing room. She sat down at her vanity, looking at her reflection. Part of her wondered if she'd overreacted. But no, she decided quickly. She hadn't. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. One of the executive producers entered, a broad smile on her face. "Joy, you were absolutely right. We're behind you 100%. "Thank you," Joy said, genuinely appreciating the support. "I wasn't sure how it would be received." "Are you kidding?" the producer laughed. "The phones are ringing off the hook. People loved how you handled it." Joy smiled. "I'm sure his supporters won't be happy." "Let them be unhappy," the producer said. "You did nothing wrong. And kicking him off was the right move." After the producer left, Joy sat alone with her thoughts. She thought about Harry, about what might have driven him to act that way. Whatever the reason, it didn't excuse his behavior. She gathered her things and prepared to leave for the day. Tomorrow would bring new guests, new topics, new challenges. But tonight, she'd go home knowing she'd stood her ground. As Joy walked out of the studio and into the bright afternoon sunshine, she felt good. She'd done her job with integrity. The empty chair on the Views set would be filled again tomorrow. And if they didn't understand that respect was a two-way street, Joy had already proven she wasn't afraid to show them the door.